This video presents an overview of the measures collected in the English longitudinal study of ageing during the nurse visit. In waves 2, 4, 6, all respondents were eligible for a nurse visit in their homes. The main purpose of the nurse visit is to collect objective measures of health, such as biomarkers and measures of physical function. From wave 8 onwards, a nurse visit is carried out at every wave, on half the sample at each time. The subsample in wave 8 consisted of respondents who had taken part in all previous nurse visit waves. On average, the nurse visits lasted about 1 hour and a quarter. Generally, responses for nurse visits are lower than those observed for the main study, mostly because proxy respondents and cohabiting spouses or partners of core members were not eligible for a nurse visit. Also, measurements were obtained only if the respondent was able to respond affirmatively to relevant safety questions. Fieldwork in ELSA is conducted by NatSen using experienced interviewers and nurses distributed around the country. A robust system of quality control is in place, and many of the interviewers have met the same respondents over several waves of data collection. This is an exhaustive list of all physical and performance examinations carried out during the nurse visit. These range from measuring blood pressure, waist circumference, and height and weight, to collecting hair and blood samples. For each of these measurements, either verbal or written consent is sought by the nurse before proceeding to collect the measures of interest, and to send clinically relevant results to the respondent's practitioner. This table shows the physical examinations and performance data collected at the nurse visits. Whereas blood pressure was measured at all nurse visits, a few changes occurred throughout the study. In particular, waist circumference and sitting height measurements were no longer collected from wave 4. Moreover, standing height, hip circumference measurement, lung function, balance, tandem stand, leg raise, chair rise have been omitted at both waves 8 and 9. Also, the weight measurement was moved from the nurse visit to the main interview in the latest nurse visits at waves 8 and 9. The majority of blood assays are collected at each wave of the study, including triglycerides, cholesterol, fibrinogen, hemoglobin, ferritin, and glucose. Other blood assays are collected only at some waves. The DNA extraction was carried out for the first time in wave 2, and at subsequent waves only for new participants. Cortisol was measured using saliva sample in wave 4, and then changed to hair sample in wave 6 because it was considered more reliable. Vitamin D was added in wave 6. A good understanding of the procedures involved in the collection of nurse data is needed in order to carry out secondary analysis of this data. Some participants might not be eligible for a blood sample or a performance test, or might not give consent, resulting in missing data on the variables of interest. It is therefore important to look at the study documentation and use sampling weights in the analyses. For more details, please refer to the ELSA technical reports. In the following slides, we will give you an overview of the procedures followed before, during, and after a physical examination test and the collection of blood samples. At the beginning of the grip strength test, all respondents are told what will be required for the grip strength measurement. Then, all respondents are asked if they are willing to take part in the measurement. If respondents are willing to carry out the test, the nurse will then evaluate if they are able to carry out the test. Respondents, for instance, might have had recent injuries, suffer from severe pain, or have arthritis. The nurse would then explain and demonstrate the test procedure using the gripometer. They would then position the respondent correctly, adjust the gripometer to their non-dominant hand size using a NatSen standard nurse protocol, and let the respondent have a practice with one hand. Once the respondent is comfortable, and having ensured that the gripometer is set to 0, the nurse would then proceed to collect a total of 6 measurements, recording 3 for each hand if the respondent has use of both hands, starting with the reading for the non-dominant hand, followed by the reading for the dominant hand. The nurse is instructed to stop the procedure if they feel this is unsafe, or it causes distress, pain, or excessive fatigue to the respondent. Finally, the nurse would record all the readings from the gripometer, as well as the respondent's position during the test and any problems taking the measures. Similar standardized procedures also apply for the collection of blood samples. First, the nurse would explain the purpose and procedure for taking blood, and then check whether the ELSA member is eligible for a blood sample. All respondents with a clotting or bleeding disorder, who have had a fit, and who are currently on anticoagulant drugs, such as warfarin or protamine, are not eligible for a blood sample. If the respondent is eligible, as blood taking is an invasive procedure, both verbal and written consent should be obtained. In particular, the nurse will seek to obtain written consent to take blood, to send the results to the GP, to store a small amount of the blood, and written consent for the extraction and storage of DNA from the sample. Before proceeding to the collection of all the blood tubes, the nurse also checks if a fasting blood sample can be taken. For those who have been advised that it was safe for them to fast, the nurse asks further questions about when and what they last ate in order to determine the length and eligibility of fasting blood samples. Once all the checks are done and the consents have been signed, the nurse is ready to take the relevant blood samples. A maximum of 6 small tubes of blood, ranging in size from 2 ml to 6 ml, are collected from each respondent. For each blood sample successfully obtained, the nurse would immediately label the blood tube and double-check the barcode on each tube against the consent booklet. Finally, all tubes are packed in a safe box and sent to an external laboratory where a number of analyses are carried out to measure the levels of the compounds of interest. The samples are taken in a particular order, so that if a situation arises where there is insufficient blood to fill all the tubes, the analyses with the highest priority could still be undertaken. If you want to know more about the sample design, the nurse visit, the nurse protocols, as well as the weighing, please visit the page resources. Thanks for your attention, and we hope you will join the community of ELSA users.